and welcome to the third lecture in the second IHF Live Online Symposium. My name is Courtney Gahan. I am a part of the IHF media team and I am your moderator for today's session. Today we have French, Spanish and Arabic translation languages available if you are joining us on Zoom. You can find these at the bottom of your screen by clicking the globe icon marked interpretation. If you're watching this on Facebook right now, we are going to share the link to this Zoom webinar in the comments so that you can join us if you have a Zoom account. This second IHF Live Online Symposium is part of the Virtual Academy introduced by the IHF roughly 1 year ago to facilitate global online learning and licensing. All of this is under the umbrella of the IHF Education Centre, available at ihfeducation.ihf.info. This second IHF Live Online Symposium is focused on development trends of the game, consequences on training methods for coaches, and tactical training for referees. This symposium includes a total of 9 live lectures presented by top handball experts from around the world. And today's is presented by Jochen Beppler, IHF Analyst and head coach for the younger age categories in the German Handball Federation. The topic of today's lecture is the new role of the line player in modern handball. And the topic is going to address relevance for coaches as well as referees in terms of what to look out for around the line player. This lecture is going to be divided into 2 parts. The first focusing on direct blocks and the second on new tendencies and indirect blocks. We are going to stop halfway to address questions about the first section. So if you do have questions early on, please don't hesitate to send them so that we can address those. You will also note during this lecture that there are QR codes featured throughout. Jochen has kindly set this up in order to help if the videos are not showing properly for anybody. You can use the QR code to access the video directly in the IHF Education Centre and watch it on your own device. The last piece of information from me is that this lecture is being recorded, so you will be able to access it for on-demand viewing later. And so we are ready to begin. Jochen, welcome.
Welcome, and thank you, Courtney, for this nice introduction. And let me say welcome and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all handball friends all over the world, depending where you are on the globe at the moment. Yeah, as Courtney has already said, today's lecture is called The New Role of the Line Player in Modern Handball. And for me, this is also, I share my presentation now, okay. This is also a question of when the line player will be the next MVP, because in the last years, we mostly remember backward players to have gained this award, but the new role of the line player, new tendencies make it possible or make it a tendency in the future that also line players could become MVPs because of their gained importance in the game. Okay, so today's lecture, as Courtney has already said, is divided in some parts. And after the introduction of some all-star pivots, pivot is used as well for line player. I will focus on a modern profile of line players, and then I would like to take a close look at Egypt 2021 and the World Championships there. So if you had been asked, would you have been able to name or remember the last All-Stars at the line or of pivot players during the last men's or women's World Championships? Normally, and most of the time, only the names of famous backward players or the most valuable players are remembered, but here you find them. But even if you don't remember them or don't know them by name, it might be of greater interest to you to take a closer look at statistics concerning the pivot position and the development on this position. The first statement marked by the red circle, you can see that from the Olympic Games 2012 until the World Championships 2015 in Qatar, there has been an increase by 5% in the percentage of all goals that were scored from the line player. At the same time, you can see this on the right, the number of attacks has gone down while the need for efficiency has increased, which is a clear indicator for the improved quality of the game. When we look at the statistics of the World Championships in Egypt 2021, we can see that this increase in the need for efficiency has continued. We are at 60.5% at the moment of attack efficiency. And what is important as well, the line player position has taken the next step, which now can be seen in an increased percentage of shooting efficiency from the line player position. It is now almost 77%. Now let's have a look at some line players having taken part in Egypt 2021. Yeah, I guess you will have recognized most of them. And I've provided, in order to talk about a modern profile of line players, the following statistics. The statistic deals with line players of the quarterfinal participants. And I have provided data of date of birth, age, height, weight, and international matches, which are an indicator for the experience of line players. And after that, I got an average value, which is that the average age of all the quarterfinal line players is 29.1. The average height is almost 2 meters, so 1.96 meters. The weight is 106 kilograms on average. And as you can see, the line players are also quite experienced. You need a lot of experience on this position because the average number of international matches is 67. Now let's have a closer look at the teams and the positions of where they score their goals. I marked 2 nations in green. This is first the world champion Denmark. They scored 25% of all their goals from the line player position. And in total, that's the red number, in total, they scored 77 goals from the line player position. Spain is also an interesting figure, not only because of the 30% they scored from the line player position, but also of the total number of 89. What is also interesting about Denmark, you can see this on the left-hand side, that Denmark as a world champion is quite balanced in the distribution of their goals. For example, the wings, the backcourt, the fast break, and the breakthrough goals have a balanced percentage of 15% of all of Denmark goals. But if we speak about a modern profile of line players, we should not neglect that line players are not only important in attack, but they also defend on key positions, such as the 4 following examples demonstrate. For example, Ludovic Fabregas from France is a key player in the French defense. The same with Magnus Saugstrup for Denmark, Max Darry for Sweden, or Simon Halt also for Denmark. But that the line player has a key role in defense could also be applied for many, many line players more, for example, Johannes Goller or Marino Maric from Croatia. So let us focus now on tactical demands to characterize a modern profile of line players. As Courtney has already said, I tried to separate this lecture into 3 parts, and the 3 parts are the following. First, direct blocks. You see here Ruben Marcan in a direct block position against Denmark. And those direct blocks cause problems in defense cooperation. They open spaces. They are most of the time the beginning of a targeted opening in attack. And they are also more often punished as illegal by referees. And this is the point of time where I would like to address also all referees watching this lecture. because the referees play an important role if we talk about adapting and new tendencies in the line player profile. It's also important that the referees adapt and develop as well. And that is why I'm strongly convinced in the following sentence that good referees don't only have a sense for rules, but especially a good sense for the game. And that is also what top referees of IHF tell me, that if they know something about the game and if they increase their knowledge, they are able to be 1/10 of a second in the future. And if you have this sense for the game and you are 1/10 of a second in the future, this helps for a good performance and a high level for refereeing as well. So let's look at facts for referees if we talk about direct blocks in the first part of the seminar. First, direct blocks occur in every sector. Direct blocks occur at wing or half defenders, often immediately after transitions by the wings. In the center, they occur after free throws or shifting movements of the center back. And as they are more common than indirect blocks, there are also more tactical fakes, because the defense also detects direct blocks earlier, and that is why offense players do not always use a direct block, but they make use of tactical feints. And those tactical feints often end up in one-on-one actions to the weak side, and one-on-one actions to the weak side are more difficult. That is why they might cause a step mistake, or they lead to breakthroughs which are highly likely to cause a suspension as well. But let me also say a clear advice at the very beginning: don't look or search for steps, or don't look for suspensions, but just be aware that they are more likely to happen in those tactical fakes. The second part of the lecture will deal with indirect blocks. Indirect blocks support actions against the defense's movement. They help to keep open large spaces, as we can see here with Ludovic Fabricas of France. They require a good understanding of the game by the line players, and they require better passing techniques by the backcourt players. What is important for referees when we talk about indirect blocks? They are not as easy to detect as direct blocks, because they happen in different sectors than where the ball is. Indirect blocks, it's important to say that if you have a good understanding of tactics, this helps you to anticipate indirect blocks before they occur. And better decisions are a direct result of the ability to read the game. This is what I meant when I said be 1/10 second in the future. And last, the modern tendency, the new role of line players is called, or I called it, line player assists. And they increased the importance of line players because they changed the line player's role from a supporter. In direct or indirect blocks, he supports the attack, and with his assists, which we are going to deal with in the third part, the role changes to a preparer of a one-on-one action. And those preparations don't appear in statistics so far. If a backcourt player assists and gives a pass for a goal, then this will be counted in statistics, but those line player assists don't appear in statistics so far, and that is why I think the line player is going to be the next MVP. And those line player assists, as you will see, are highly effective. So, facts for referees: if we talk about those line player assists, those supporting movements often prepare a one-on-one or quick shots. Line player assists often end in an indirect block in the next sector. And when you deal with line player assists, maybe there's a need for a good or a new distribution of tasks within a couple to deal with the different sectors where the line player is moving into and where the ball is. So a good distribution of tasks in a couple is helpful. So far to all the theory stuff, and now let's jump into the direct blocks and the scenes I prepared for you dealing with the World Championships in Egypt. But last thing, to structure those direct blocks, I prepared the following slide for you, saying that direct blocks can occur in every sector. They can occur at the wing defender, at the half defender, or at the center defenders. But they differ, or the difference between the positions is the tactical aim. When there is a direct block at the wing defender, we often find so-called mismatches, where physically strong line player is playing against a physically weak wing defender, or direct blocks at the wing defenders cause an isolation of the center. If there is a direct block at the half defender, this often is an initial start of an attack, and central defenders are attracted. So this opens space for the line player to move or to run into the center. And last not least, direct blocks at center defenders separate the central defenders, or they support crosses of backcourt players, or they create space at the outside positions at defenders number 2 or 5, or what we will see, blocks are also not between the two central defenders, but at the outside position. And the tactic feint, if the attack doesn't make use of the block. So we start with videos and a direct block at the wing defenders. The first clip is taken out of the match Spain against Hungary. And don't mind the number at the top of the slide. It's only the correspondent number with the IHF Education Center, which is open to everyone. And as Courtney already said, here I provided a QR code which you can use on your own device if my or your internet is working poorly, and so you can watch the clip by yourself. So you should be ready with the QR code now, because here's the clip we are talking of. You have the chance to watch this scene several times if you watch this lecture on demand, or if you have the QR code. But I took out the most relevant or crucial part of this clip. After a transition of the left wing player of Spain, we have a so-called mismatch. You see the physically strong line player of Spain against the physically weak wing defender of Hungary. And Hungary tries to cooperate in a very offensive position, which opens space for the retransition of the left wing. And here he is given the ball to score. Second clip deals with a match Norway against France. Again, you find the QR code here if you want to watch this clip on your own device. And here you can see the clip online or live.
To say, you saw we don't get anything for that. 2 on the line now to try and make space. May Renili pushed as he went to shoot.
Okay, we are also looking at a crucial point of this clip, which is here. Again, we had a transition of left wing of France and a direct block at the wing defender. So a mismatch again, but this time it was solved by the Norwegian defense with superiority at the ball side. You can clearly see that triangle of 3 defenders at the top of the picture. And then out of this, there is an advantage for center back of France. counter Mahé, because the central defender number 3 cannot come into a good position to attack Mahé, and central defender number 4 is covering the line player. That is why Mahé is very dangerous, and superiority is reached, and Mahé can pass on the ball to the right side and create a good chance to score for France. We move on to direct blocks at the half defender position, with the first clip taken out of the match, France against Hungary, and the equivalent QR code. And here the clip. Here we have again the key point of this action. There was an initial block from the Hungarian line player Bence Banhidi after the transition of the left wing. And the couple Banhidi and Lekaj are extremely dangerous for every defense. And that is why Dikamem shows a good technique working against the block of Bence Banhidi. And that is why Lekaj is not able to play one-on-one or shoot or even pass the ball to Banhidi. And that is why he passes back to left back, and Banhidi adapts and reacts very good in this situation and adapts his block and can play with the left back of Hungary in this situation. The next scene is taken out of Spain against Norway. It was the quarterfinal of the World Championship. You know the game, QR code, and the clip. So we had this direct block at the half defender of Spain, and you can simply realize the mistake of the defense. There's no triangle existing. The central defender with number 30 of Spain is in an offensive position, and that is why Norway has a lot of space in the center to play with Bjarte Myrhol in this situation. And now the last situation dealing with a direct block at the half defender taken out of Slovenia against Sweden. I realized that there is a hand raised, but sorry that I cannot interrupt now, but we will have a short break. And if you put your question into the chat, Courtney will deal with that. And in the break, we can talk about your question. Sorry for that, but otherwise we could not proceed properly. In this scene, I took out this picture because it's a different opening, a high transition of the Slovenian right wing player Blažjans, who is also very dangerous from backward positions. And on this picture, you can see that he has a lot of space to accelerate, and both defense players are dealing with a highly dangerous line player of Slovenia, Blaž Blagotinšek, because no one of the two defenders can move outside, because otherwise the space for this dangerous line player would be too much. And here I provided a 3D graphics for you, which you could use for your players, or which could be of interest for the referees as well, because they are taken out of the perspective of a backward player or the field referee. It is exactly the situation which we just saw with Blažjans from Slovenia, only that it was on the opposite side. But what can we see in this situation? You see the yellow circle, and because the two defenders cannot decide too early who of them is going to be attacking the left or right back. They both are waiting and they both are observing the backward player, and they cannot observe the line player. That is why they have one hand touching the line player in order to know where he or she is. And this is very important for the referees and us coaches as well. But if there is a hand touching the line player, this hand is missing for a block. So quick step shots could be a solution in this situation. The other thing is the line player will try to get rid of the hands touching him because the hands are above his hands. He needs to catch the ball. And that might be something very interesting to observe for the referees if there is an initial foul by the line player or by the defense players. This is a different perspective from the goal referee or the goalkeeper, and also important for us coaches. If we want to continue with a direct block, the right foot of the attacker should be over the left foot of the defense player, so that it's not so easy to solve the block. And it's also important that the line player does not make use of his backside to block the half defender, because this is not allowed. And that is what I put together on this slide for the referees. First of all, maybe you have seen or watched the presentation of Jorge Duenas, which I would like to recommend to you because he dealt also with defending the line player. And the second point is every hand that is covering the line player cannot block shots. So you should pay attention on this. The hands of the line player might cause an offensive foul. Let me say this once again. It's not that you should look for those things, but you just should be aware that it might occur or that it's more likely. And before the block of the line player, watch out for key points such as the position of feet, the use of the backside or shoulders in order to assess if the block is correct or not. So there's only one thing missing: direct blocks at the central defenders. And the first example is taken out of the match France against Sweden. We see a slow motion of this here. And what is interesting in this scene is that this block is not between the two central defenders, but the block is to the outside at defender number 4. And the Swedish center back, Jim Gottfridsson, has his strong arm on the right. And that is why those blocks to the outside support the handedness of central back players. And so the offense creates a superiority in little space, but players like Gottfridsson are able to solve those superiority situations in little space as well. Next clip, France against Hungary, also a quarterfinal match of the World Championship. And it's the same after this crossing with the line player. A great save by the French goalkeeper, but you saw that it was the same principle, a direct block of the line player after that crossing with center back, a block to the outside of the central defender, giving the center back of Hungary the opportunity to gain an advantage because he's also right-handed, And that is why this kind of direct block to the outside is quite common after different openings of the attack. It goes without saying that there can be also direct blocks between central defenders. And this is highly effective because it creates space for cooperation to the sides. And I've dealt with that topic last year in the first IHF Academy in my lecture called Learn to Create Spaces in an Attack. And this lecture is still available on YouTube. Maybe this QR code is also of interest to you, that you could watch the lecture of last year at a later point of time. Okay, so we are close to the end of the first part, but we should not miss the tactical feints, because after we have dealt with the blocks at different positions, the wing defenders, the half defenders, and the central defenders, we should speak about tactic feints now. As I said in the beginning, direct blocks are very easy and early to anticipate, and that is why they are also easier to defend. Therefore, the attack also needs to take other ideas, which is not making use of blocks, to take an advantage out of such situations. What do I mean by that? For this, I prepared a short picture roll with a match taken out of the Olympics 2016, Germany against Egypt. And you see that there is a direct block planned by the German line player Pekela against the Egyptian defense. Let's look at this in detail. Pekela is preparing the direct block against the half defender, and the central defender of Egypt is already telling him, be careful, there will be a direct block. And that is why you can see direct blocks are easy and early to detect. How does this situation go on? Egypt is preparing to solve this block. Everybody thinks that Wiede on right back will go into the center, but he does not. He's playing to the weak side. Remember what I said at the beginning. He is going to the weak side, which is more difficult for the backcourt players. And he is winning this one-on-one duel. He is attracting the wing defender, and you see on the right wing, Tobias Reichmann is free to receive this difficult pass, because this pass has to go beyond the defender's arms. And Reichmann on right wing has a lot of space to solve this situation and to score. So this is what I mean by not making use of blocks as a tactical feint. We also find this in the final of the World Championships in the following clip taken out of Denmark against Sweden, where the Swedish right back does not use the block. Okay, and here's the clip.
See their way through to the semi-final. Oh, Sidesteps and Latin.
Okay, we should look at this clip again, because I think it's really good to see Lagergren playing this one against the weak side. So he's not using the block, although the defense thought this might happen. And we also see that Nikolaj Jakobsen, the Danish coach, is complaining and making the sign for steps. And as I said in the beginning, one-on-one actions to the weak side are more likely to cause steps. And if you are 1/10 of a second ahead of time, you could concentrate. And my question to you is Nikolaj Jakobsen right with his complaint? did Albin Lagergren really make steps? We should look at this in detail if Nikolai Jakobsen's complaint was justified. We see step 0 with receiving the ball on the right foot. So this would be 0. Then the second step with the left foot is 1. Third one, the second one with the right foot is step number 2. Then the left foot again is number 3, number 4, and even a 5th step. And let me say this as well. I do not show this in order to say the referees gave a bad performance, because it's so hard to detect in those match situations. Okay, so next clip is taken out of the preliminary round. No, it was the main round, Uruguay against Poland, where the center back of Uruguay used this feint. And now everything starts. Very well done of the center back of Uruguay, because Gebala, the central defender, moved around the block very early, and he realized that, and that is why he did not make use of the block. And for him it was an advantage, because he could move to his strong side. But nevertheless, he did very well in that. Now we are going to see a nice clip taken out of Egypt against North Macedonia, where the left back of Egypt, a very young and talented player, also made use of this feint. It's very nice because it's against a different defense system than 6-0. And clearly no steps, because he has space enough to make a bounce with the ball, and then a very nice pass to the line player, a very nice cooperation among them. And 2 final clips before we have a short break. I took 2 special situations where direct blocks occur. The one is superiority, and the second, a very interesting clip, a block feint. So first clip, superiority, Iceland against France. Iceland plays 6 against 5 in this situation. Here you have the QR code leading to Dartfish TV, and here's the clip. It's quite interesting because Iceland already has a superiority. They play 6 against 5, and against the very offensive central defender of France, the Icelandic line player Kári Kristjánsson goes out and blocks with the front. A direct block with the front has the advantage then that it is very precise, because the line player can see where he must put the block, and because it is very precise and you have no problems with the backside, such a block with the front does not risk an offensive foul. So this was quite well done by Kári Kristjánsson. And now we are going to move into the short break with a highlight for every coach's eye. It's taken out of France against Switzerland. Transition of the left wing.
5 minutes play. Puts to the line, Milosevic, brilliant one-handed catch.
And this is something you should see again. That is why I played a second time. You can see how carefully and well planned everything is by Andy Schmid, the center back of Switzerland. He's directing the left back go outside. He's communicating with his line player Alen Milosevic, and those block fakes are not as common, but they are really attractive in our sport.
Second suspension of the game already for the Swiss in 5 minutes play. Puts to the line, Milosevic, brilliant one-handed catch.
Yeah, and at this time, I guess we should make a short break, and I hand over and pass the floor to you, Courtney.
Okay, we didn't receive so many questions yet, but somebody asked if you can elaborate a little bit about why direct blocks are more often punished by the referees.
I guess it's because they are detected earlier, and it's a longer fight for the better position between the defender and the line player. It's always about having the better position when we deal with line player and defender. And if the line player has a bad timing, which means he is too early in this direct block, he has to fight longer. And longer fights cause that they must use arms, and then everything gets more and more, how could I say, not as clean in the playing, or illegal. And that is why direct blocks are earlier to detect and are more often punished.
Okay, we actually don't have any other question about direct blocks, but somebody did ask a question. It's not strictly relevant, but it's about line players. So let's talk about this. Somebody just asked, at what age do you think a young player could start to specialize playing as the line player?
I guess this should be around, in Germany, we have those age categories. We have 5 age categories around 15 or 16. I think it makes sense to specialize, because as you will see in the next part with indirect blocks, maybe this is a good transition to the next topic. It's of great relevance for line players that they understand what is happening in the game, that they have a sense for other positions like backcourt players. In Germany, we say the line player is a second playmaker. And that is why I think it's good if children and young players have great experience on different positions before they specialize, especially for line players who should have experience on backcourt players, and they have seen the match from a different perspective before.
Okay, that's all for now, so we can continue.
Thanks, Courtney, and thanks for the questions. So the second part deals with, from my point of view, even more interesting actions and profiles of line players, which are indirect blocks and assisting movements. As I already said, the line player in modern time, in these days, does not only support by blocks, he also keeps open spaces or creates spaces. And that is why he needs experience on different positions. And as we saw in the profile of line players, he also needs experience by many international matches. So indirect blocks, as I said in the first part, are not as easy to detect for referees, because these blocks start to exist earlier than some referees are ready for them, because they occur in different sectors. The ball is in a different sector than the indirect block. With a direct block, you often have the ball and the line player in the same sector. But with indirect blocks, we speak about different sectors, and that is why we again need a good distribution of tasks. So here is the structure of indirect blocks as well. Indirect blocks at the position of the wing defender, I have to admit they occur rarely, but they occur more often at half defenders or central defenders. If they are put at half defenders, they are meant to isolate one of the central defenders, and then the line player is ready for a cooperation in this indirect block. If we have an indirect block at the central defenders, it is meant to divide the center into two parts, or to prevent defense movements, which means that indirect blocks keeps open the space, and we all know that the bigger the space is, the less precise you need to pass, and the bigger the space is for the attack, the easier it is to solve. There are also tactic feints. We will deal with one of them at the end of this part with indirect blocks. As I said, they are not as often at wing defenders. That is why I start with indirect blocks at half defender position. I start with a clip taken out of France against Sweden. Again, you find the QR code so that you can watch the clip on your device.
Gets a free throw.
Yeah, we have 2 times in a row the indirect block of Dari at the half defender's position. 2 times in a row. Here's the second time. I think to begin with that, we can look this scene once again. Dari is moving out of the center, preparing the room for Gottfriedson for one-on-one. Now he's moving away, and Gottfriedson can play 1 against 1.
Wished he got a little bit more than the free throw for that one.
Second time. And this time Gottfriedson tried. This time Gottfriedson tried to pass the ball to Dari at the line player position, but Dipanda defends this pass because he knew what would happen. Second clip, indirect block at the half defender's position, is out of Sweden against Egypt. This is a very interesting combination of Egypt. After a crossing, the line player, it's Mamdou, is waiting in an indirect block for the pass of Ali Zain. And yeah, with this nice cooperation, the target is hidden for a long time, that Ali Zain is going 1 against 1 or playing with Mamdou in this indirect block. So it's long hidden and a very nice combination of Egypt. Now we're talking about indirect blocks at the central defenders. France against Sweden. Oh, QR code. So, and now the scene starts with this crossing on the right side. You should look at this clip once again, because the first crossing in the back is not relevant. And now Max Dari is in the center. And now he's in the indirect block against Fabregas. So Gottfriedson receives an indirect block against the number 3 defender Fabregas. And Gottfriedson is a player who has a very good quality to shoot with a quick step shot or pass the ball to the line player. And he is also able to solve this situation in high quality. Denmark against Egypt, very attractive game in the World Championships. Here we have an indirect block at the center defender after a quick throw-off of Denmark.
Suspect a little on that side. It's Nico Hansen's side, ironically, as Yahya Omar goes through. Okay. Giselle seems to have a direct line.
So here we have the situation after the quick throw-off. A very good and talented player, Matthias Gitzel, receives the ball after the quick throw-off. The Egyptian defense is not ready to cooperate properly because the half defender loses this one-on-one duel against Gitzel. It's very nice to see that he makes not only a change of direction, but also a change of rhythm, a very good feint. And Magnus Saugstrup is waiting in the indirect block, and Gitzel can play with him. They are able to cooperate.
Giselle seems to have a direct line.
Yeah, and this is what made me think of taking this situation in a 3D graphic as well, because I think it's important to look at this from different perspectives. Again, this perspective is taken out of maybe the field referee or the attack, because they can really learn from this perspective. Here we see the line player, Magnus Saugstrup, in the example, keeps open the space in the center. He keeps it open, and after Gitzel has won his one-on-one, he attracts a second defender and creates a superiority. And this is why I would recommend to the referees that you talk about who is taking care of the breakthrough and the one-on-one action, and who is looking after the already existing one-against-one duel at the line player position in the indirect block, to come to a good decision. That is why I also took this scene out of a different perspective, which is the goal referee. This scene looks like this to him, and we see again the big space kept open by that indirect block, and we see the ball is in a different sector than the line player. What is also interesting, and where I would like to draw your attention to, is at the right side of the picture, the half defender is already preparing to help to reduce the spaces between the defenders, which is a common thing in active defenses. So here we see the different options for offense, which is either passing to the line player or cooperating with the center back, who is able to receive the ball in forward movement. So we are still dealing with indirect blocks, Poland against Hungary. This is very common as well. So it's only important until this point, and then we can stop, because we already had this indirect block. Let's look at this situation again. We had a transition of the right wing player, and then we have a long crossing in the backcourt. The right back starts a long cross for left back, and the center back moves on to the right back position. And synchronically to this crossing in the back, the right wing plays a retransition on his original position. And while this occurs, you see the indirect block to keep open the space for a 3 against 2. So here we have the indirect block because the ball is in a different sector. That is why we talk about an indirect block, and we have a 3 against 2 situation. In this clip, it was not solved by Poland, but in the match against Uruguay, they played the same opening and tactical idea. And here you can see how it looks like when it's played properly. We have the transition, the long crossing, and here the indirect block. Once again, very nice play by Poland. And again, let's look at this from different perspectives. This is the situation in the final moment. When the ball comes from center back to right back, the line player keeps open this space because the defense wants to move to the side where the ball is being passed. So this happens at the same time, and that is why it's so hard to detect or to anticipate. So this happens, and then we have the 3 against 2 situation. At this position, we should teach our players how to block correctly. And on this position, right back, the decision is taking. Either for a breakthrough of right back, or a pass to the line player, or a pass to the right wing. These are the options for right back. And we also have one central defender who needs to decide, and this is the wing defender. And it depends on the behavior of the wing defender. If he is good and early, if he detects this situation early, he might cause an offensive foul of right back. Or he is too early, he's not working properly and causes a suspension, or the right back passes easily to right wing. Let's look at this from the perspective of the goal referee. I think it's very important that we teach our players to see the game from different perspectives. And here my last slide with the advice to talk about or to think about a situational distribution of tasks. Because you should deal with the question, is this block correct or not? And who is going to look at this block of the referees, the goal or the field referee? If right back receives the ball, we should look at if he causes an offensive foul or if he's doing a proper breakthrough. If he goes to his weak side, does he make steps or is he really doing it technically correct? Is the wing defender helping inside the goal area? Then it's a 7-meter throw for the attack. So, and again, you should think about who is responsible for which observation criteria. And if he passes the ball to the right wing, we all know that we should teach our wing defenders not to touch or not to be an obstacle for the right wing of the attack. So is the defending of the wing correct? So it's a chain of actions. So again, with indirect blocks, we also have tactic feints or special situations. And I want to show you one which is highly attractive. It's taken out of the match France against Sweden. And it shows the quality of center back Mahé. But also have a look, as you know, we're talking about indirect blocks. have a look at the line player.
Going to be a free throw. He wasn't controlling the ball to that.
It's a retransition of right wing. And then at first glance, everything looks as if Mahé is going to play with left back.
Oh, beautiful play. It's going to be a free throw. He wasn't controlling the ball to that.
It looks as if he is playing with left back and he does not look to the line player. But as he has the quality of excellent passing technique, he decides in the last moment to play with the line player. I've taken a picture row out of this to show crucial moments. In the first situation, you see that the Swedish half defender at the top of the picture is not working in a triangle, but he's anticipating and defending the pass to left back. Then Mahé is moving further in the center. Yeah, this is what we just saw. Then Mahé is moving more towards the center. And we see that the half defender has gone back some steps and closing this triangle against Tournois. And at the same, you can see this here. And at the same time, the French left back is running inside the center. He's preparing for crossing. And although everybody is thinking that Mahé will continue with a cross, he feints the cross. And although there's only little space, he brings this pass to his line player who can score. And now, last part of my lecture today, the third part, new tendencies in line player profiles. This is what makes me say that line players are the upcoming MVP, because line players are no longer only supporters who keep open spaces, but they are also preparators. And what do I mean with that? They prepare the room for targeted one-on-one actions which lead to a breakthrough or a 7-meter throw. And there we have a big difference, a huge difference. While backcourt players are given assists for passing the ball to a player who scores the goal, these prepared spaces by the line players are not counted in any statistics so far, and they are somehow neglected. And if we take into consideration that we have, in the meantime, many of those line player assists who create the space and prepare the space for a one-on-one, we should give line player also assist points for those actions. Here you can see what I mean with that. If the line players open or create a space, they are assisting a one-on-one in large space. Sometimes they only make use of spaces when they cut into free spaces behind offensive defenders, but those assisting movements are more and more common, and they are well timed, and that is why they are important for us coaches as well as for the referees. So the first situation, I've prepared a picture row and a 3D graphic as well. It's taken out of the match Denmark against Spain. In the first picture at the top, you can see Morten Olsen on center back, a player who has a very high quality in shooting with quick step shots, and he's also able to play an excellent one-on-one. But what you can also see is the exact picture I showed you with Blas Jans in the 3D graphics as well. Both Spanish defenders are looking for Magnus Saugstrup because they have to cooperate, they have to observe who of them should become offensive against Morten Olsen in the first picture. Morten Olsen bounces the ball once, which is something like a signal or the start for Magnus Saugstrup to move out of this central zone at exactly this point of time. And this is what we can see in picture number 2 at the bottom, that Magnus Saugstrup is moving out of the center in order to isolate one defender. In picture 3 at the top, you see he is already out of the central zone. This means that number 3 defender is alone, and now he knows he has to act against Olsen, but he's too late because Olsen is already in the 9-meter area. He's already able to score. He's already prepared to do a quick step shot, and that is too much space, too much time for him, because a player with his ability makes use of that. The defender who was grabbing or who was looking for the line player has not his arms ready for a block. This is what I showed you in the 3D graphics, so that Morten Olsen can score with this quick step shot. And here we have the same thing out of a different perspective. Saugstrup still in the center, Morten Olsen with one bouncing. Again, some hints or clues where you should pay attention to, either as a referee or as a coach, to teach our players how to defend correctly or how to set up blocks correctly. Here's the perspective when the line player is out of this area. We have one defender on his own, and if he's coming outside, Morten Olsen will probably play 1-against-1, but here he is too far away for the quality of Olsen that he scores with a quick step shot. And again, out of the perspective of the goal referee. So these are line player assists because they prepare a one-on-one situation, or they prepare a good shot where the center back scores, but the assist is given by the well-timed action of the line player. We see this also in this clip taken out of Germany against Hungary. Look at the line player, Johannes Goller, is going into the center. And Johannes Goller assists Philipp Weber by moving away, isolating the Hungarian defender Sipos, who is isolated, and Weber plays the 1-against-1 to the weak side as Sipos is moving outside, trying to attack him. And this goal should be an assist for the line player because he prepared this sector for a good one-on-one action. Let's look at the final of the World Championship. Denmark against Sweden.
2 meters and 108 kilos. So we're into the last 5 minutes of the first half. Mensalas, who's come on. Hansen gets a free throw.
Here we have a different opening, which is a long crossing of Mats Mensah for Matthias Gitzel. And with the bouncing of Mats Mensah, Simon Halt as a line player moves out of the center, isolating the one-on-one. This again is a nice line player assist for a one-on-one of Mats Mensah. France against Portugal. And here we have the line player assist in a different sector with a different cooperation, which is a crossing of left back for center back. As I said, a different sector, and with a pass from Remili to left back, Ludovic Fabregas moves out of this area, moves towards the center, and the half defender is isolated for a one-on-one, and Remili, as a left-handed player, can take a good advantage even if the pass is not perfect to break through and score for France. Another isolated one-on-one was Congo against Denmark. This is also a different opening with shifting positions.
They'll try and get the ball out to Johan Hansen on the wing. Oh, straight through, penalty. Little shove on the way through. Just took a hand to his face.
We are going to look at this clip again because you see the different opening, the shifting to the right. And as we see the slow motion, you will realize that the supporting movement of the line player is already over. So we don't look at this supporting movement, but the movement of the line player assisted Holm to play this one-on-one. Sorry.
They'll try and get the ball out to Johan Hansen on the wing. Oh, straight through, penalty. Little shove on the way through. Just took a hand to his face.
Okay, and those supporting movements, those line player assists are really helpful to create good situations for strong players in one-on-one. I come to the end of my presentation. I want to show you a picture row taken out of Denmark against Spain. In this picture row, we have an unusual assignment of players because normally the line player acts more in the center, but here he has moved to the outside position. He is covered by Arinho, as you can see in the second picture at the bottom. And we have an unusual assignment of players. In this case, the central defender Moros is responsible for Matthias Gitzel. As I said, a very good player in 1-against-1. And as we see in the following pictures, Gitzel is also able to attract the second central defender, passes the ball on to Morten Olsen, and this is already enough to create a good shot, a good situation, because if you have good passing techniques out of this 1-against-1 situation, it's enough either to create a shot on the left wing, as here by Magnus Landin, or even a breakthrough by Mikkel Hansen. But once again, this one-on-one results by the assisting movement of the line player in the correct timing. If he assists or moves too early, the defender could act from a better position. And that's what it is about. That the movement by the line player is in a correct and good timing, so that the defenders come into a good and basic position at a late point of time to see this. Again, I put this into a 3D graphics, and we all tend to follow the ball only with our eyes, but as you can see, we have the crossing in the back, And in this time, the line player moves out of the center. And we have to take a look at this. If he is moving towards the goal area, if there are obstacles by the defenders, grabbing the shirt or whatever, but everything is well planned and the line player is assisting a one-on-one, which we have here. And we have a large space on the other side, and we have an unusual assignment in this situation. Just to point out what is happening and how our game has developed at the end of this lecture. And here you see the last picture of my presentation. And I want to end with an option, a good option, which would also helpful in this situation. This could be a transition of left wing in this open space, but this would be a different topic, a different IHF Virtual Academy, maybe dealing with transitions from the wing players. But so far for today, with my presentation to a modern profile of line players. And yeah, at this stage, thank you for joining this course. Thank you, Courtney, for hosting. And before you have questions, let me say enjoy also the next presentations of the IHF Academy.
Okay, thank you so much, Jochen. So let's dive into some questions. Let's start with the ones that do really address the profile of the line player. We have a few people asking about whether a left-handed line player is particularly useful. And also related to that, somebody asked how important is it for the line player to be competent receiving the ball and being able to shoot with either hand?
Thank you for this question, because at the beginning I had a bad conscience because I only selected clips from the Men's World Championships, but it was so present at this moment. But there is one technique I observed only a few times, and one of the players being able to do this is a female player, Heidi Løke from Norway, who sometimes catches the ball on the right and changes for throwing on the left hand. So this is also something she has acquired herself. In men's handball, you often see different techniques of shooting, like over the shoulder to the back, or just by throwing like this. So I would answer this as follows. In men's handball, you see different techniques with one hand. In women's handball, just have a look at Heidi Løke or look at some clips, search some clips of her on YouTube. You can see many situations where she changes the ball. And I think this could be adapted to men's handball as well. This would be helpful if players are able to throw with the left hand, because this is also an unusual situation for the goalkeeper as well. So if they are left-handed, the more options you have. And if you have a left-handed line player, to answer this question, maybe some sectors are more likely to be successful or are easier for a left-handed line player. He feels more comfortable in this sector than in different ones. But in general, I wouldn't say that there is a huge difference between a left-handed or right-handed line player.
I'll just add something that I recently interviewed Heidi, and she actually spoke a lot about this, how she worked on this. And she also, in line with your point earlier, where you talked about the value of a line player playing as a back, she started as a back, and she talked about how useful this has been for her. So it's just interesting to see how that lines up.
Exactly. And let me really encourage everybody to look at the clips, not from a men's perspective only. It was just because of the Men's World Championships in January, but the tendency in line player activities or developing this role are the same with women. If I look at Dragana Svijic or Tovisi Petra from Hungary. You can really see talented line players in women's handball as well, and just look at it from a handball perspective and at a line player perspective, not from a gender one.
Okay, let's talk a little bit. Well, somebody has just asked, what about height in the line player? Is it okay if they're short? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, we see some differences. If I compare the line player of Norway, Bjarte Myrhol, I think he's around 1.90 meters. I'm not quite sure. And Bence Banhidi, who is about 2.10 meters. There are different kind of defense systems which are more useful for smaller line players or for bigger ones. If I think of more offensive system where the line player has to run a lot, or where he has to cut into spaces, being able to play with the backward players like give and go or something, then I guess smaller players who are more likely to have quick changes of direction might be more successful. And against a defense system where you find 6 players with a height of 2 meters, it's more easier to put direct blocks if you're physically strong. So it's neither nor. It's not neither nor, or do you say this? Do you say it this way? It's not either or, but it's both.
Okay, somebody's asked about line players being aggressive. Basically, this person asked, is movement of the elbows allowed? But yeah, I mean, let's talk a little bit about these elbows, and then maybe let's see if we explore this a little bit more.
At this point, I think it's important to say that I'm not an expert for rules or rule interpretation, but I think that it's very important for both coaches and referees to be in a dialogue how we want to develop our game. In general, I think it's a good character trait for a line player if he likes to have body contact and if he or she is a fighter, but everything within the rules. And I think it's really important for referees to have a line at the very beginning, to be ready to observe when a block is being set up, to be able to anticipate it and to tell the players what is allowed or not. And if this is the same in the first minute as in the 60th minute, I think the players will adapt and also the coaches will adapt. If the players or the coaches don't do that, then it's their fault. But in the development of the game, I think it's very important that we do not work on separate ways, but that we develop this game together.
I want to explore this just a little bit more, because I think it is a really common conception in handball that the line player is really physical and aggressive. Can you talk about why that's not the case? Like, what are people seeing that is actually, I think there is more finesse to the position than just this physicality.
Maybe we should point out how important playing at the line is and how much of game understanding it needs to be more than only ready to fight, because it is a fight for the better position. At the line, it's a fight for the better position, but this fighting is bad if it's not within the rules. But if it's within the rules, then I guess it's what people also like about handball, that it's a thrilling game with body contact up to this stage where it is allowed and still attractive. And I think it's our duty to transport that there is more than only fighting for this better position, but to know when to put the block, how to assist the backward players, and how to cooperate with them And this is the job of everyone, also the media, because sometimes I have the impression that only this picture is conveyed, that there are strong fights and little technique, but especially in the passing techniques to indirect blocks or shooting while being touched or under pressure, there are very good shots and a good throwing technique to observe as well.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that great answer. Okay, we just have a couple of questions about more game situations. We'll just address one or two. Somebody asked, this is quite specific, but if there is a 5-1 defense, what do you think is the best solution for the line player, related to the line player?
If you want to create a one-on-one, as I showed with the line player assists, then you should definitely look at the example of France again, where they did this crossing and isolated the half defender and played the cross left back for center back. If you want to have another cooperation with a direct block, then also the sector between half and central defender is relevant. I think it's that we teach the players to look out for the sectors that are highly effective, and that they are able to make use of their weapons in one-on-one. And this is more and more common, and I guess it will become even more important with the evolution of the game, because passive play is in discussion. The players will have less time because we will have passive play earlier and less passes in the future. And that is why I guess one-on-one actions after those line player assists will gain even more importance. And this is what we should teach, that the players have good abilities in one-on-one and create spaces for where they could make use of those weapons.
Okay, we're venturing a little bit further from this topic now, but I think this is also an interesting one. Somebody asked about the understanding and cooperation between the central defenders regarding the line player. How can you help them improve their understanding of what's happening?
It's a good question, because I have to change my role from an offense view to a defense view now. I think important is that players participate more in the game. It's about line players as well. We have to teach defense players with a totally new approach. If we only teach defense that it is about being aggressive or being hard in one-on-one actions, this is not modern handball anymore. And changing my role now, I would say it's about teaching defense players what offense wants to achieve. And first they have to understand what they want to achieve and what are attractive spaces for them and what are attractive spaces for me. So maybe in this case, the defense can guide offense players into sectors where the defense wants them to go and offense players do not want to go into. So first of all, I think we need also a totally new approach to playing defense, that it is not about being a tough defense player. It belongs to defense, no discussion. But if it's the only thing players can do in defense, then this time is over, I guess.
Okay, I think we'll wrap up there. We are right on time. Thank you so much for answering all these questions. I know that some of them were a little bit, I knew you would have to switch your mindset a little bit. So if you have any concluding remarks, otherwise I will say goodbye to everybody.
Yeah, let me say goodbye as well, and enjoy the next presentations. And enjoy the Olympic Games in handball.
Yes, we're inside 1 month until the Olympic Games. Actually, today 1 month, the women's handball competition begins at Tokyo 2020. So everybody, we are back again tomorrow for the next lecture, Friday, 25th of June, 2 p.m. Central European Summer Time, with a colleague of Jochen's, David Groger. He is the athletics coach, the national athletics coach at the German Handball Federation. And his topic is about the overarm throw, how to improve throwing velocity and protect the shoulder. So we will see you tomorrow. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. Thank you, Jochen, and goodbye.
Bye.